The coffee shop was supposed to be just another stop, a quiet place tucked between glass towers where people escaped for a moment of caffeine and calm. But that afternoon, a small act of arrogance would ignite a chain of events no one could predict. Beneath the warm lighting and the hum of conversation, tensions waited, silent and unseen. A single glance, a careless assumption, and the scene began to shift like the first tremor before an earthquake. No one realized they were about to witness a moment that would test the limits of power, respect, and hidden truths. Have you ever wondered what lies behind the faces we underestimate? How many people have we dismissed, only to discover they hold a strength far beyond what's visible? The truth is that dignity lives quietly inside everyone, waiting for a chance to stand up when least expected. And sometimes it's not just about one person standing tall, but about the unseen connections that give them power. As the story unfolds, you'll feel the pull of a world where status crumbles and true character steps forward. You'll see how an ordinary scene can twist into something extraordinary, where a single phone call can flip the balance of an entire room. Every detail in this moment, the spilled drink, the frozen stares, the tremble of hands, holds a clue to a larger revelation. This is not just a confrontation, but a lesson waiting to erupt into full view. In this narrative, the walls of privilege and assumption close in only to crack under the pressure of truth. You'll sense the invisible current moving through the crowd, drawing everyone toward a reckoning. What begins as humiliation turns into a test of loyalty, courage, and integrity. Each heartbeat in the room becomes a drum roll for what's about to happen next. And somewhere beyond the glass, an unseen figure is already on the move, carrying with him not just authority, but the power to rewrite the moment entirely. The story you're about to hear is more than a clash of people. It's a collision of values, and it won't let go until it's done. The lobby hummed with quiet chatter as crystal lights trembled above polished marble. She walked in with a calm face and a simple navy dress that carried a quiet grace. People glanced and then pretended not to, like they always did when status was unclear. The manager sized her up with a thin smile that never reached his eyes. He drifted closer, all charm on the surface, something colder underneath. She asked for a table and kept her voice steady and warm. He smirked, as if the request itself were out of place. The air shifted, subtle yet sharp, like a storm thinking about starting. He waved to a server and picked up a sweating glass from a side tray. The soda hissed with tiny bubbles that popped like impatient whispers. A few guests leaned in, sensing a show, pretending to be bored. The woman stood her ground, chin up, eyes clear, hands still. The manager tipped the glass and let the syrupy stream fall. Cold liquid splashed the dress and ran in sticky lines to the floor. Gasps sparked around the room like short fuses catching fire. She did not flinch, and that unsettled him more than he expected. He said it was an accident, with a smile that dared anyone to argue. She looked at him with a softness that felt stronger than steel. He tried to laugh it off, claiming the room was crowded and the tray unstable. Her dress clung, darkened by the stain, yet her posture stayed elegant. Around them, silence crept in and wrapped itself around every table. A hostess shifted from foot to foot without moving. Someone set a fork down and forgot to breathe. The manager waited for her to break, and she did not. He offered a napkin with theatrical concern that only made the room colder. She took the napkin and dabbed the fabric, every gesture unhurried. He expected embarrassment, maybe a plea for mercy, maybe a hasty exit. What he found was a measured presence that pierced his show. She asked again for a table. Same tone, same patience, no edge. He laughed and said they did not serve walk-ins at this hour. The hostess knew that was not true and looked away. The woman kept breathing slow, as if time belonged to her. He started a speech about standards and dress codes and private clients. His words sounded polished, but rang hollow to anyone who cared to listen. He explained the history of the place as if he owned it. She nodded, as if listening to a child tell a tall tale. The assistant manager hovered nearby, eyes bright with borrowed bravado. A couple near the entrance exchanged a look that said, "This is not right." The server who carried the tray watched his own hands shake. The woman finally asked for the manager's full name for her notes. He puffed up and spelled it out slowly, like a dare. She repeated it back, perfect, and added the time and date. The assistant manager smirked and whispered something about knowing people. She lifted her gaze and let that whisper fall to the floor. A faint ring buzzed from her phone inside her bag. She silenced it and kept her attention on the man in front of her. He mistook her calm for weakness and pushed one step further. He told her some doors just are not meant for everyone. The words hung there, heavy and mean, too bold to pass as policy. Her shoulders squared and her breath settled, quiet and steady. Someone at the bar said a soft prayer that sounded like no. A boy in a jacket glanced at his father and learned something he would not forget. The marble floor reflected the lights like a mirror that judged. She wiped the last of the soda and folded the napkin neatly. He waited for a scene and only got poise. That poise began to make his own voice sound small. She asked if the owner would agree with the way he spoke. He said the owner trusted his decisions without question. The assistant manager nodded with a confidence that did not belong to her. A few staff members knew better and kept their eyes down. The woman set her bag on the counter gently, never losing grace. She asked for a glass of water to clean her hands. The server brought it like a small apology that wanted to be larger. She thanked him with a kind smile that made him stand straighter. The manager announced that the lobby was not a waiting room. She tilted her head, listening, and then looked toward the door. Outside, the street glowed with late sun and the rumble of arriving cars. A hush moved through the room as if the walls could sense a turn. She reached into her bag and tapped the screen once. Her eyes were calm, but something purposeful flickered there. The manager tried to reclaim the room with a brisk clap. His clap sounded thin, like a lie snapping in half. She told him she would make a call, simple as that. He scoffed and said the list was full for the evening. She nodded as if confirming a detail in a file that mattered. The server watched the door with a hope he did not fully understand yet. The assistant manager shifted again, trying to look unshakable. The woman breathed in, steady, and the air seemed to shift with her. Some stories look quiet right before they stop being quiet. The next moment was already on its way, and nothing could hold it back. The phone felt cool and heavy in her palm as she stepped toward the glass doors. She pressed it to her ear with a motion so calm it almost looked rehearsed. Around her, murmurs rose and fell, like a tide that did not know which way to flow. Her fingers traced the edge of her bag as she walked a slow circle near the marble column. Nobody heard the name she whispered into the line, but they felt the shift in her tone. Her voice had a quiet authority, not loud, yet capable of filling the whole room. She paused between words as if measuring each one. The manager stiffened, sensing his moment slipping out of reach. She didn't start with a greeting, she started with a fact. "It's happening now," she said, her voice low enough to make people lean in. On the other end, a man answered in a steady but sharp tone, his name still hidden from the curious ears nearby. The assistant manager tilted her head, trying to catch a fragment. The woman spoke again, soft but direct, using only half sentences, letting silence fill the gaps like ink on parchment. She didn't reveal who she was calling, but each pause built another layer of tension. Someone near the bar could almost hear the heartbeat of the room. Michael's voice moved through the speaker with a firmness that steadied her grip. She told him the place, the time, the details he needed without naming them. She mentioned the insult, but not the manager. Her language stayed careful, coded, but every line she spoke carried weight. He asked only one question, and she answered without hesitation. Those around her saw only a woman making a call. They didn't see the web of power sliding into place behind the scenes. They couldn't know that each word pulled a string that would soon reshape the room. The manager approached, trying to reclaim control with a smile that looked like a crack. He asked if she needed a towel, but his voice quivered slightly. She raised a hand to silence him without looking up. That gesture cut through his authority like a blade. She tilted her head as if listening to distant thunder. On the line, Michael had already started to move, his mind calculating the quickest path to her side. She kept her back straight, her tone even, letting him know she was fine, but not alone. Outside, a black car rolled slowly past the entrance, its windows tinted its driver scanning the building. She glanced toward it, a small flick of her eyes that nobody noticed except one nervous server. Michael's voice deepened on the line, words low and controlled, the kind that made people obey without question. She gave him a time frame and then a single word that locked the conversation in place. The manager shifted from foot to foot, sensing a current he couldn't see. She spoke now in a softer register, like a whisper meant for one person only. She mentioned the marble, the spilled drink, the crowd, the names she had written down. Michael responded with a pause long enough to feel like a shadow moving. Her eyes narrowed as she listened, then softened, as if satisfied. She ended the call without a goodbye, sliding the phone into her bag with a steady hand. The silence afterward felt heavier than before, like the air before a storm. The assistant manager tried to break the tension with a small joke that fell flat. The woman turned, meeting her eyes briefly, and the assistant dropped her gaze to the floor. Around them, customers started to realize they were not watching a scene, but a turning point. The soda stain on her dress looked like a badge now, dark and deliberate. Her shoulders rolled back, her posture taller, like someone who had just stepped into a story bigger than the room. The manager leaned on the counter, his knuckles white, trying to find a path back to normal. He asked if she would like to be escorted out, his tone half polite, half warning. She smiled without teeth, a small curve of her lips that felt like a verdict. He asked who she had called, and she ignored him. The hush in the lobby deepened, and even the air conditioning seemed to still. Outside, the black car circled back and stopped by the curb. Its presence sent a low murmur through the crowd. The woman smoothed the front of her dress, flicked a droplet from her wrist, and exhaled slowly. Something in her eyes said the next move would not be hers alone. She shifted her weight and angled slightly toward the entrance, waiting. The manager saw it too and swallowed hard. Her phone buzzed once more, a single pulse of light against the navy fabric. She didn't answer this time. She only glanced at the screen and tucked it back. Her stillness became its own message, a silent code between her and whoever waited outside. She turned slightly, eyes on the door as if feeling a breeze from far away. The moment stretched like a string about to snap. Nobody knew exactly what would happen next, but everyone felt it coming closer. Engines rumbled outside as a convoy of dark cars glided to the curb. Their windows reflected the late light, hiding whatever was inside. A hush spread across the lobby like a shadow passing over water. Every head tilted toward the glass doors just as the first bodyguard stepped out. Tall, silent, built like granite, he scanned the room before moving aside. Another followed, then another, until a corridor of black suits formed. People whispered, but the sound died quickly, swallowed by the tension. The woman's eyes flicked toward the entrance, her expression unreadable. The doors opened with a slow hiss that carried its own authority. William Carter entered without hurry, a presence more than a man. His suit absorbed the light. His tie cut a sharp line down the center. His gaze swept the room once, taking everything in, the spilled drink, the frozen staff, his wife standing calm and still. The air around him shifted, thicker now, charged like metal before lightning. He stopped just inside, adjusting his cuff as if he had all the time in the world. The bodyguard spread out, closing gaps, securing edges. He walked toward her in measured steps, each one a declaration of control. The manager straightened as though bracing for impact. The assistant manager's smile faded into a thin line. Customers pulled their phones closer but dared not lift them. William's eyes did not flicker from his wife. When he reached her, his hand brushed her shoulder lightly, the only sign of softness amid steel. She looked up at him and gave a small nod that seemed to unlock something between them. He turned his attention to the manager without a word at first. Silence built like a dam about to break. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, low, threaded with steel. He asked the manager to explain what had just happened. The manager tried to shape a narrative, words tumbling over themselves, but William's eyes held him like a vice. The assistant manager tried to interject and then thought better of it. Around them, the crowd leaned forward, unable to look away. William raised a single hand and the bodyguard stepped closer, their polished shoes silent on the marble. He repeated the question, slower this time. The manager stammered about an accident, about misunderstandings, about policy. William tilted his head, as if hearing a language he did not understand. He asked for the names again, one by one, spelling each in his mind. His wife stood at his side like an anchor, her calm now mirrored in his power. A tremor passed through the staff as they realized who stood before them. The Carter name hung in the air, heavier than the chandelier above. One bodyguard handed William a folded paper with the manager's profile. He skimmed it, lips tightening. The assistant manager tried to step back but found her path blocked by another suit. The room felt smaller, walls inching closer. William lowered the paper and spoke a line so quiet it echoed louder than a shout. He walked toward the counter, fingers trailing lightly over the marble edge. The manager backed up a step without realizing. William's voice carried a chill now, each word measured, each pause deliberate. He described exactly what his wife had reported on the phone, matching detail for detail, leaving no room to deny. The manager's hands twitched at his side, a man shrinking under a lens. Customers exchanged glances, witnessing a scene that felt both corporate and personal, like a chess match with no escape squares. Outside, the last car door opened, but nobody got out. Inside, a phone vibrated softly on a table, and no one dared answer. William placed his hand flat on the counter, his wedding ring catching the light. He asked again, this time not for explanations, but for something closer to remorse. The manager's mouth opened and closed with no sound. The assistant manager whispered a faint apology, eyes fixed on the floor. William's gaze stayed steady, unblinking. He took one step back, then turned to his wife, speaking in a tone only she could hear. She nodded once, a subtle sign, as if confirming a decision already made. William straightened and adjusted his jacket, signaling the bodyguards with a flick of his hand. The room braced for whatever came next. The manager licked his lips and tried to find his voice, but lost it again. The assistant manager clasped her hands together, trembling now. William's presence filled every corner, an invisible pressure pushing outward. He glanced at the spilled soda still glistening on the floor, then at the faces waiting for a verdict. His wife remained still, her expression calm, but alive with something fierce behind her eyes. Outside, the engines of the cars purred low, steady, patient. Inside, everything hung on his next move. The moment before a decision always feels like a cliff, and everyone in the lobby felt their toes curling at the edge. The room fell into a deeper hush as William Carter finally broke the silence. His voice cut through the heavy air, even and clear, like a blade sliding free from its sheath. He named the manager and the assistant manager slowly, making sure every person in the lobby heard. The two stiffened, their faces turning pale, glancing at each other for support. William repeated their names and then stated their position, drawing a clean line between them and the rest of the staff. The audience leaned in as if watching a verdict being delivered in a courtroom without walls. His wife stood beside him, still and steady, her presence like a silent verdict of its own. William stepped closer to the counter, setting his palm on the marble with deliberate calm. He spoke of policy, of respect, of the lines that must never be crossed. He listed each detail of the humiliation, his voice rising only enough to carry but never to shout. The manager tried to cut in, but William's gaze fixed him to the spot. The assistant manager swallowed hard, twisting a ring around her finger like a child fidgeting with a toy. The other staff shifted but didn't move, sensing something irreversible unfolding. Bodyguards stepped forward, not aggressive but unmistakable, their silent presence framing the moment. William declared that both individuals were dismissed, effective immediately. His words landed like thunder, wrapped in velvet. The manager's mouth opened to protest, but nothing came out. The assistant manager whispered something that died before reaching the air. Customers exchanged glances, recognizing the gravity of a public firing done without theatrics, yet heavy with consequence. The manager tried to reach for a phone, but a bodyguard gently laid a hand over it. No force, just finality. William stated that security would escort them off the premises and that further action would follow in writing. The assistant manager's eyes darted to the exit, searching for an escape that wasn't there. The entire lobby watched as authority and accountability converged in real time. William's wife kept her gaze forward, expression neutral, yet unyielding. William then spoke about the standards of the company, and the promise to treat every individual with dignity. He said the words without preaching, letting their weight do the work. The staff listened, some nodding slowly, some looking down. The manager's face turned crimson, then gray, as he realized the performance was over. The assistant manager clenched her fists and blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. The tension in the room had shifted from anticipation to reckoning. The crowd didn't cheer, didn't clap. Instead, there was a heavy respect, a recognition that something rare had happened. William's voice softened just enough to be human again, but not enough to undo the decision. He asked the staff to witness not just the dismissal, but the reason behind it. Integrity was not an abstract word now. It stood in front of them, breathing and unmovable. His wife touched her hand lightly to the edge of the counter, a silent echo of his stance. Bodyguards guided the manager and assistant toward the doors. Their movements were quiet, almost ceremonial, like a ritual of departure. The assistant manager looked once more at William, eyes wide with something between fear and regret. The manager's shoulders sagged as if the air had been let out of him. Customers leaned back, some averting their eyes, some watching intently. Outside, the black cars waited with doors open, engines still humming. William didn't watch them leave. Instead, he turned to the staff and thanked them for their patience. He reminded them that respect was the backbone of any establishment, no matter how polished the marble or expensive the menu. His tone held no malice, only certainty. The staff exhaled as if allowed to breathe again. The lobby began to feel like a room again rather than a stage. His wife finally shifted, taking one step toward him, her stained dress still clinging, but her presence radiant. He glanced at her, and something softened in his eyes, only for a heartbeat. The moment held both endings and beginnings, as if a chapter had closed but another was waiting just outside the door. The hum of the engines grew louder, promising motion. He gestured for a bodyguard to bring him his phone, scanning a message that had just arrived. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. His wife noticed, but didn't ask. The staff lingered, sensing that even though two people had been removed, the story inside these walls wasn't finished. William looked toward the entrance as if expecting something more. The air shifted again, thinner now, but full of possibility. The lobby felt transformed, lighter, but still charged with aftershocks. William Carter stood in the center, one hand resting on the marble counter, the other loosely at his side. Around him, staff and guests waited, their faces expectant. His wife adjusted the strap of her bag and lifted her chin, her stained dress now a quiet emblem rather than a mark of shame. The silence had a texture to it, like velvet draped over stone. Outside, the cars idled patiently, their engines purring a low undertone to his next words. William began speaking without raising his voice, letting the weight of the moment carry his tone. He said respect is not a courtesy to be granted when convenient, but a constant that defines character. He glanced around, catching the eyes of the staff one by one. Each gaze held for a heartbeat, an unspoken promise that this would be remembered. His wife stood a little taller, her calm now amplified by his voice. The onlookers leaned in, as if the lesson were something rare and valuable. He described how power without integrity corrodes everything it touches. He spoke of dignity, not as a gift from those above, but as a right carried by everyone who walks through the door. His words landed softly yet firmly, shaping the room into a classroom no one had expected. Staff members shifted their weight, some blinking away the sting of shame, some absorbing the charge of resolve. His wife's eyes softened, the corners of her mouth almost hinting at a smile. He told them status was a shadow, not a measure. Clothes, cars, titles, those things came and went. What remained was how one treated another human being in the quiet moments no one might see. The lobby's mirrors reflected him from multiple angles, turning one man's speech into a chorus. People glanced at each other, reminded of their own choices. Even the marble seemed to hold the echo of his words. William's tone warmed slightly, moving from steel to something closer to guidance. He spoke of how easy it is to forget our shared humanity in places built on prestige and exclusivity. He said such forgetfulness is the first step toward cruelty. and cruelty always costs more than it seems. The staff listened as though he were unveiling a map to a better place. His wife watched him with the calm pride of someone who knew this side of him well. He extended his hand toward a nearby server, thanking him for the water offered earlier. The young man's face flushed as he shook it. William's gesture rippled outward like a small light in a dark space. Guests who had stayed to watch found themselves unexpectedly moved. The idea that power could defend rather than humiliate felt almost radical in that setting. The stained dress no longer looked like an accident, but like a symbol of the turning point. He then invited the staff to consider their roles beyond the tasks and uniforms. Every person here was a keeper of the atmosphere, he said, a steward of something larger than the menu or the decor. A single act of grace or cruelty could set the tone for hundreds who came after. The words hung in the air, offering a choice rather than a command. His wife exhaled softly, as if a tension she'd carried all evening had finally eased. William glanced toward the door but did not move yet. He let silence grow again, making room for reflection. His eyes landed on each employee, then on the customers, as if weaving them into the same circle. He spoke once more, quieter now, about how true respect leaves no one behind. Some staff members nodded, their posture subtly straighter. The assistant manager's empty spot by the counter was a ghost that underlined the lesson. Outside, the cars continued their low murmur, but now they sounded less like engines and more like a heartbeat waiting to resume. William turned to his wife and brushed a droplet from her sleeve. She smiled faintly, a shared acknowledgement of everything unsaid. The crowd began to disperse, carrying fragments of the moment with them. Something about the air felt fresher, as if a door had opened somewhere unseen. He offered his arm to his wife and guided her toward the exit with an unhurried grace. As they passed the threshold, he turned back once, eyes scanning the staff one final time. His look held neither threat nor promise, only expectation. He stepped outside, the bodyguards falling in around them. The black cars swallowed them up, engines rising, the convoy moving off into the night. Inside the lobby, the echo of his words lingered, a quiet challenge to everyone left standing. Sometimes the most powerful moments don't come from wealth or status, but from quiet dignity rising at the right time. What started as a cruel scene ended as a lesson in courage, respect, and the unseen ties that hold real power. The coffee shop returned to its usual noise, but something invisible had shifted, a reminder that anyone can change the room with one call, one stand, one act of integrity. What did you feel watching this story unfold? Have you ever been underestimated or seen someone's true power emerge in an unexpected moment? Share your thoughts below. Your story might inspire someone else reading the comments. On this channel, you'll find other stories just as gripping, filled with twists, conflicts, and revelation. Subscribe, activate the notifications, and leave your like to keep following these emotional narratives. There's a whole world of hidden power and unexpected justice waiting for you here. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Until next time.